Productive Pastor 40, The 7 Habits of Unproductive Pastors. What's going on, friends? Chad, we're back with this episode. This is one of our throwback episodes for this month, because remember, I've been telling y'all I've been working on some other special fun stuff. So I'm replaying episodes from the first version of Productive Pastor, which ran from 2014 to 2019, and this is one of those classic episodes, 7 Habits of Unproductive Pastors. Now, with all of these vintage throwbacks, realize I might be talking about some links and some things that just might not exist anymore out there, but the main content of this conversation is beautiful, it's fantastic, I love it. It was one of my favorite episodes from way back when, in Productive Pastor's teenage years. So it's great to have that on there. A couple things before we just jump in. Just like every episode, come hang out with us in the Productive Pastor community on Facebook. There'll be a link to that in the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/040. It's the productivity party over there. It's great. And also just realize this is episode 40 of the reboot. You know, this has been a weekly podcast for the last year. It took 3 years the first time around Productive Pastor to hit 40 episodes. So cool. It's fun. It's awesome. But I'm going to just be quiet. I'm going to start playing the primary content of that, the 7 Habits of Unproductive Pastors. So buckle in and learn something together, and I'll see y'all on the backside. What makes us unproductive? Because no matter who you are, where your skill set is, what you're good at, there's going to be things that make you unproductive. Now, a few episodes back, episode 52, I talked about procrastination. And here is the thing about the procrastination episode. So much of my research that I've been looking for and finding, it had nothing to do with laziness, that procrastination is all about fear. Now, thinking about that, procrastination is all about fear. And so this is the emotions that I think really lead us towards being unproductive. And if we want to use the word ineffective, it has to do with fear, but it also has to do with, think of the conversations that we have of when we get just absolutely tired and ragged out, when we're scattered in ministry. When we are at the edges of our margin, every single person has a capacity index. And some people have tremendous capacity, and some people don't have tremendous capacity. But every single one of us, no matter where we fall on that spectrum, that we can hit the edges of our margin. And when we're at the edges of our margin, that's when bad things start to happen. This is where we start reading about and hearing about burnout. Okay? Burnout is a huge conversation right now. Carey Nieuwhof has had some fantastic interviews about burnout. But also think about it, that in leadership, do we have consistent conflict? Has conflict, let's be honest, absolutely honest. Has conflict seemed to follow you at your places of ministry? Is that something that's happened routinely in and out? If that's the case, you might want to look inside and try to figure out, what am I doing to cause this conflict? Or how is my ministry style being unproductive for the modern age and for the modern day? And so, with that, 7 habits of unproductive pastors. Excited to share this with you. Been thinking about it for the last few weeks. The first one is this, and we're gonna make a pretend person we're thinking about. Okay, so let's just put that image in our mind, and let's just call him Unproductive Pete. Why don't we? Okay. First one, they aren't incarnated. Okay. Not incarcerated, but they aren't incarnated. I think so much about this. For me, the first chapter of John is just huge in my own vision of ministry. And I really dig in deep in the Eugene Peterson's translation of John 1:14. The word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. That unproductive pastors have not incarnated into where they're leading and into where they're leaving. And depending on what ministry family or what style or tradition you're part of, this can be incredibly hard. I'm a United Methodist pastor, and typically United Methodist pastors move a good bit, and we're consistently being sent. It is something I've seen time and time out, that we're not incarnated. We do not live as though Jesus has placed us there, and that these are the people and the place that we should be passionate about. We should absolutely love the place and the people that we are called to serve. Had a conversation with a leader a couple of weeks back who was struggling with something, and they started getting really kind of vindictive and judgmental against the people that they were leading. They didn't love them, okay? When you're not incarnated, when you don't have like skin in the game, you have a dog in the fight, whatever other analogy we want to put there, you're going to struggle with being productive. You're going to struggle with being effective. You're going to go out on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or whenever you lead primarily, and you're going to see folks that frustrate you. What you're not going to see is the gift of the church that Jesus has called you to lead in some capacity. So that's the first habit of the unproductive pastors. They aren't incarnated. The second habit is this: they don't know what they are doing. Now, at first, you might kind of kick back with that. And I'm not talking about their skill set, like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. But they don't exactly know what they are doing. This is something that is just like core conversation on Productive Pastor, that if you are not managing and directing your schedule, somebody else will. They're not future focused. We're going to talk more about that later on in the episode, but there's a lack of a planned strategic schedule, where they're not anticipating what's going to be coming up in the next 2 weeks, or the next month, or even the day of. I remember when I first started ministry, what really made me think about this was after a few weeks, I've always been a project manager or a team lead in larger or more strategic churches. And I sat down at a church a couple of appointments back, and after about a month, I realized I was walking in every morning not knowing what I was going to do that day. As long as my sermon was done, I had no other directives. So I started intentionally planning out, these are my goals. This is what we're going to work on. This is what has to happen. This is what has to happen in what order. This is who I have to have alongside of me for this. Episode 3 of Productive Pastor is about a priority-based schedule. That is still historically one of the most popular episodes. And so you can go to the show notes and just stream that straight from this, Rev Chad Brooks / PP040. So the second habit of the unproductive pastor is they don't know what they are doing. And the third habit of the unproductive pastor is they can't differentiate between the urgent and the important. And there's a huge difference, okay? This morning, I got caught up. We're a portable church, and so urgent and important are huge because almost everything we need for Sunday morning lives in a trailer, and I can't get to it throughout the week. We had a couple of systems go down, and we realized that, oh man, we've got to work on this stuff. And then other things started popping up. Urgent and important are very different. And what you will find is that the urgency will command your attention, and you will not be able to ever get to what's important. You got to learn to differentiate. I think the Eisenhower method, General Eisenhower had a little 4 boxes that he would draw to help figure out what was urgent and what was important. Okay. The third habit of the unproductive pastor, they can't differentiate between urgent and important. The fourth habit of the unproductive pastor is they don't delegate. Okay. This is a huge one. This is the one that is on the forefront of my mind all the time because I have to be super intentional about delegation. I'm one of those cats that will go do it myself. And that's bad because here's the thing. Whenever I default to doing everything myself, it hurts my church. It hurts the people I lead. It becomes scattered. That I'm not creating a place for someone to serve, thereby not creating a place for someone to grow closer to the reality of the life that Jesus has called them to. Okay? Delegation's huge. The delegation is about us seeing and increasing other people's capacity. Michael Hyatt has a host of stuff on delegation. It's probably the best out there for anyone who struggles with delegation. I'll always send them to a series of blog posts and podcasts that he's produced. Those will be in the show notes. So you make sure if you struggle with delegation, you need to check out Michael Hyatt's free resources on that. So that's it. Number 4, the fourth habit of the unproductive pastor is they don't delegate. The fifth habit of the unproductive pastor is they don't know their personalities and strengths. Okay, this is gigantic. This is one of the first things I go to whenever I start working with someone in a coaching relationship. I start asking them about their personality and their strength. And there's two resources that I have found to be better than anything else. Okay? The first one is this. It's the DISC test. Have you ever heard of that? The DISC test. It costs like $25 to take. You should absolutely take the DISC. I found it about a year into full-time ministry when I got out of seminary, and I had been struggling for a year that my predecessor seemed to accomplish things and get things done were so much better than I was, and I was always playing catch up, and it drove me crazy because I could just never get my handle around the role of that pastor's office. This was an associate pastor at a mid-sized church. What was expected. And I took the DISC test, and what I did was I was sitting there and I was taking it, and my background is in sociology, and so I'm good at reading tests and kind of figuring out like how they work, what's actually going on, and we get our results back, and the DISC test is great because you go through the way that you see yourself, the way other people see you, but then also a middle ground that's your actual self. And I began looking at this test and realizing that personality-wise, I was the exact opposite of anybody who had been in that role for almost 10 years. And that no matter how hard I tried, I would not be able to fulfill those needs. And that what I was doing was then not taking care of and not leading in a way that I was really highly skilled at. And I was incredibly frustrated and constantly frustrated at it. So the DISC test helped me to understand the way that I was wired and the way that I relate to people. And then the Gallup poll has Strength Finders 2.0. Now, Strength Finders is an incredible test. It's a book. You got $25 again for it. You take a quiz. And the quiz, there's 36, I think, or maybe 38 strengths.
Future Chad breaking in here for a moment. There's 34 strengths. And I love the strength test, and I think having the full 34 is the most valuable thing there. Wanted to come in and make just a tiny little adjustment to this. We'll go back to it now.
And the quiz will give you your top 5, and then the book has some resources on what that means. And that's incredible, huge, because it allows you to keep focused because you know, like, these are the things that I am really, really good at. There's actually a way that you can pay even more money, and they'll give you your ranking scale on every single one of them. And I want to figure that out because I want to see what it says I'm worst at. But I took the Strength Finders 2.0 test about 2 or 3 months ago. I've been putting it off for ages. And I took it and I realized this is hitting the nail on the head, and it's these things that I'm absolutely great at. And it reminded me that I've got to be making a time for this. I've got to be operating in my strengths, operating the way that I am wired. You're going to find yourself, you're going to be so much more productive when you know yourself. And I know if you've taken like free tests, or I'm not a big fan of the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs. It's just way too superfluous and inward focused. For as far as leadership's concerned, I think the DISC and Strength Finders are just absolute essential. And what you'll end up doing is you'll be able to begin creating workflow strategies. It's going to help you out with your schedule management. If you lead a team, I would recommend you paying for your team to take these so everyone sees what everyone is good at and how they work. It's going to make things a much more pleasant work environment. Trust me, you'll be more effective. So that's the fifth habit of the unproductive pastor is they don't know their personality and their strengths. Now, the sixth habit of the unproductive pastor is they can't keep the future in focus. Now, this is something I'm thinking about a lot right now. I started color coding my calendar. You might have seen pictures of that on Instagram. I've started color coding my calendar, so I'm aware of the work I'm doing that's future focused, the work that I'm doing that is maintenance, and the work that I'm doing that is catch up. Those are 3 piles, and I want to spend more of my energy doing future stuff. Now, because maintenance is, here's the thing, we can easily spend all of our time doing maintenance level work at church. It'd be easy to do. We do it so often, but here's the problem. Maintenance doesn't maintain. Maintenance can't maintain because we're never moving forward. You'll find that churches and leaders who don't move forward will end up taking steps backward without them even knowing it. This goes back to that schedule management thing, is figuring out, okay, how much time am I spending on future-focused work? And you know your ministry context best to be able to discern what that is. Now, we'll have an episode of Productive Pastor coming up the next couple of weeks on future-focused scheduling because this is something that I'm just spending a lot of thought energy on. So that's the sixth habit of the unproductive pastor. They can't keep the future in focus. The seventh habit, the last one, the seventh habit of the unproductive pastor is they don't have routines. Plain and simple. A couple of months ago, I realized that our world here at my church was changing, and one of the things I absolutely needed to get back on was my Monday routines, pretty heavy, and then my morning routines. And what I have found out is if I can complete my morning routine, it is going to set the tone for the absolute rest of the day. And routines are helpful because they build muscle memory. So I have so many routines that I live by now, and I'm probably overdoing it. But I think for the leader to at least think about an intentional morning routine. And I know if you have little kids, it's just tough. If you start work super early, it's tough. If you're bivocational, it's tough. But just carving out that morning routine is absolutely amazing. It's something that I don't think you'll realize how much it's going to change things.
Going back and listening to that episode while I was, editing show notes, that sort of a thing, y'all, it was a throwback. I mean, especially I kind of popped in there to talk about the strengths. I didn't realize that this was just when I discovered that tool that I use constantly every day. All of my coaching work I do with people, with individual pastors, it all begins inside of the Clifton Strengths Assessment. The full 34 is a powerful, powerful thing. But also listening back to those 7 habits of unproductive pastors. There's so much truth in there. And there's so much truth in there for me. Like I can see myself where it means when things get funky, when things feel disjointed, all of that sort of stuff. Those habits of unproductivity, it's just still strong. It's there. So we've got one more episode coming up in this vintage throwback era of episodes. Then we're coming in hot in February with all new content, some new stuff like there. But like I said, come hang out in the Productive Pastor community earlier. It's the Productivity Party. We'd love to see you there. Fun stuff's happening. But until then, I'm Chad. This is the latest episode of Productive Pastor, and I will see you back in the next one, episode 41.